Many thanks for choosing us. Sierra Leone has overtaken Ghana as the most peaceful country in West Africa in the latest Global Peace Index. Ghana has now dropped to the 4th position from its previous second most peaceful country, also in Africa. The GPI by the Institute for Economics and Peace covers 163 countries, comprising 99.7% of the world's population, using 23 qualitative and quantitative indicators from highly respected sources, and measures the state of peace across 3 domains: the level of societal safety and security, the extent of ongoing domestic and international conflicts, and the degree of militarization. Threats such as armed robbery incidents, highway robberies, attacks on journalists, political violence, the land guard menace, and other perceptions have been attributed to Ghana's decline. Well, how did we get here? I've been joined by Albert Yelyang. He's the National Network Coordinator for the West Africa Network for Peace Building, WANEP. He joins me via Zoom. Mr. Yelyang, Ghana has dropped from the most peaceful country in West Africa and also dropped to 4th from being the number 2 peaceful country in Africa. How does this decline come across to you? Kindly unmute for me, Mr. Yelyang. Hello, Mr. Yelyang. Do we still have Mr. Yelyang on Zoom? Right, so we're trying to get Mr. Yelyang's network fixed. And as great. Good to have you, Mr. Yelyang. I was asking you about how you feel that Ghana is no longer the most peaceful country in West Africa, and also has dropped from number 2 to number 4 as the second most peaceful country in Africa.
If you look at the data, what the Global Institute of Economics and Peace, has analyzed, and the indices, and the areas where we have fallen, these are also indices that in country there have been reports on. And so you would understand that they are taking data from what is out there in the public domain, and probably also having conversations with the stakeholders, as far as those indices are concerned. You look at the area of conflict. Yes, one would say that there is some stability, in the country, but there are many of them that are unresolved. And if you look at, for instance, Boko conflict, it is something that is on the radar almost every week. I mean, there is something to report about it, and if that data is captured by the Institute of Economics and Peace, and including other areas like Doba Kandiga, which was also on the radar now, there are some attempts also to bring that conflict to a certain stability. And across the entire country, there are pockets of conflicts that have not been resolved. Some of them, I would say, they are just, stable. They have been managed to some extent, but those conflicts have not been transformed. Recently, there are reports across some of the northern of eastern enclaves. All these are things that are picked by the Institute of Economics and Peace. Now, you also look at the issue of armed robbery. There has been a number of them, including robbery of very key properties. For instance, the attacks on the policeman recently, is one of them that can give an indication that something else in terms of and robberies at strategic locations is taking place. Now, the issue of journalists has been on the radar for some time now. How journalists are treated, how they are prevented from doing certain things, and how it's like they are being targeted. All this is information that is in the public domain, and the Institute of Economics and Peace definitely will capture that. Let's not forget that these are trends that are built over time. So they capture the trend data over time. and then to give do their analysis and to come out with a report.
Mr. Yelyang, I'll have you hold 1 minute for me because we've had to cross over to the funeral of the poet Amate Edu, where President Akufo-Addo is about to speak.
Excellency John Dramani Mahama, and I see also his once and perhaps future running mate. The African High Union representative for silencing the guns, the Honorable Dr. Mohammed Ibn Chambas, Chief of Staff of the Office of the President, the Deputy Minister for Education and Member of Parliament for Abuakwa North, the Chief of Defense Staff of the Ghana Armed Forces, dignitaries, Nananom and traditional rulers, the family of Professor Amate Edu, fellow Ghanaians, ladies and gentlemen. I do not know which of our languages it is that has this saying, but I've heard it said that somewhere in West Africa, there is a saying that every time an elder dies, a library burns with him. You do not need to know or understand whichever of our languages this saying originated from to understand exactly what is meant. I believe we're saying that every time an elder dies, some amount of stored knowledge disappears with him. However, that cannot be said of the woman whose life we're gathered here to celebrate this morning. Exceptional woman, knowledgeable teacher, famous poet, public servant, flawless storyteller, outstanding writer. She possessed an excellent mastery of the English language. Like many, I'd heard about the news of the death of Amate Edu with great sadness and sorrow. The community of writers has lost one of its greatest members, one who will be extremely difficult to replace. She was my contemporary in the 1960s at Ghana's premier university, the University of Ghana, Lagos. Even though she was 4 years older than me, she was someone with whom I enjoyed friendly and productive relations. Through her work, she made a tremendous contribution to the development of our country and continent and expressed so many of the feelings about our fate as Ghanaians and indeed as Africans. Amate Edu carved a stunning career spanning 7 decades, where she's famed for, quote, taking African literature back to one of its primal origins, unquote. She exemplified the famous words of that great Kenyan writer, Ngugi wa Thiong'o, that the written words too can sing. Her plays and essays captured the imagination and spoke directly and unambiguously. Her books and plays contain compelling experiences that would never be forgotten by anyone who had the privilege to read or watch them. Indeed, plays she wrote as far back as 1964 are still being studied in our schools because of their continued relevance to the growth and development of our nation. Literature, in her own words, quote, must serve a purpose to expose, embarrass, and fight corruption and authoritarianism, unquote. As a tireless advocate for women, it was her belief that women are the first-line educators of our children, our communities, our nations, our region, and our continent, and that we empower our children by empowering our women. She fought against the multitude of hurdles, cultural, economic, religious, and social, that faced women, and urged leaders across the continent and indeed across the world, to take appropriate actions to implement fully and efficiently commitments needed to improve the welfare of women and girls on the continent. Amma's brief and only foray into formal politics saw her being appointed Secretary for Education in 1982 in the Provisional National Defense Council government of the man who subsequently became the first president of the Fourth Republic, His Excellency, the late Jerry John Rawlings. She took up that position because she wanted to get the majority of the Ghanaian population, especially the girl child, educated. She was certain that if our nation desired the skills that are required to compete in a modern economy, and if we also desired to gain the self-confidence that comes from being truly independent, providing access to all Ghanaians, especially women and children, was a must. Education for her provided the fastest route out of poverty. In those tumultuous days, it became apparent that she could not easily realize this goal, so she graciously exited government. Failure for her, however, was never an option, and she went back to pursue the path for which she was known. Even though she never took up a gun in Africa's struggle for independence, her pen did the fighting in helping to ensure the liberation of the political and social consciousness of the African. Her life's work was a classic example of the oft-cited adage, the pen is mightier than the sword. Amma Ata Edu was a big Ghanaian and had a reach that was beyond Ghana. We will miss her. The African continent and indeed the world will miss her. My wife Rebecca, my children, my grandchildren and I express our sincerest condolences to her daughter Kina, whom she adored, to her grandchildren, to her family, and to all Ghanaians on this great loss. May God bless her and give her soul peaceful rest in the bosom of the Almighty until the last day of the resurrection, when we shall all meet again. Amen.
And that was President Akufo-Addo eulogizing the writer, poet Amma Ata Edu, who we lost sometime last month. May his soul rest in peace. Let's go back to a story on Ghana dropping from being the most peaceful country in West Africa and also dropping from 2 to 4 as the second most peaceful country in Africa. And with me is Albert Yelyang. He's the network coordinator with ONEP. Mr. Yelyang, so the GPI we know uses the level of societal safety and security, the extent of ongoing domestic and international conflict, and also the degree of militarization in every country as criteria in drawing such conclusions. From your research, what could be accounting for this decline in the case of Ghana?
As I indicated before, we have many of the conflicts that have not been resolved. And then in these conflicts, we have deployments. So we have security that is constantly in Boko. We have security that is also in the northern part of the country because of the threat of violent extremism. Now, we also have agro-pastoralist conflicts that has been a trend for some time now in many of the communities, especially in the northern part, Ashanti regions, and Eastern and all of those, and the Volta, that many of these interactions have resulted into violence between community members and then the pastoralists. Now, if you look at the interventions and the presence of security elements, largely we have the military that is present in those locations. And so if one of the indices is looking at the type of security that is deployed, then it could be plausible to say that, or to agree with the report or the finding of the Global Peace Index. And so if you also look at the issue of economics, many of these things would have been playing out because of the economy, particularly incidences of armed robbery and some kind of attacks on people, like the bullion bank attacks, And so there are social tensions at the local community levels, based on the fact that the expectations of the populations are not really met, and this has stretched for some time now. And within the period of the monitoring, as per the report, has been dated. So I think these are some of the things that have contributed to the decline that we have. If you look at the decline, the report, 84 countries improved across the globe, then 79 dropped, and Ghana is one of those countries that has dropped. So it would tell us that there is something else that is not happening well. The issue of global some conflicts, like the war in Ukraine, Afghanistan, Sudan, but one would not really say that is the one that is adding up so much to the tensions and the kind of conflicts that we have in the country. And as we said, the issue of journalism has also come up in the report, and there has been that trend, and data is out there. There have been incidences that have been monitored that indicate that, there is not that friendliness between journalists and especially the political elites.
So how can we reverse this situation, especially as a country preparing for one of the biggest elections next year?
I think that we need to take the report as it is, do an analysis, look at the indices that they have been reported on. Now, beyond that, we need to do a further analysis of our own situation, coming out with certain indicators that we think that, could be things we should monitor on, and then begin to do interventions that then can address those situations. For instance, we have the issue of Boko, which is still on the radar, and as long as there is sporadic shooting and violence in that area, the indicator will continue to record, per any other mapping, in the index that may be done. And so if you lose out on those indices, then it becomes a problem. Then how do we, as a people, as a government, respond to the threat of violent extremism that is, staring at us in our faces? So involving almost every stakeholder and analyzing the issues multidimensionally, is very important. And then resourcing institutions that are supposed to take the leadership in addressing those, issues will be very important. Otherwise, it becomes, difficult for us, especially as we inch towards 2024 general elections.
Mr. Yelyang, I'm grateful for your time this morning. Albert Yelyang is the National Network Coordinator for WANEP. In the town of Enum, located in the eastern region, a captivating custom has captured the attention of its residents and visitors alike. This peculiar tradition dictates that both the inhabitants and guests of Enum are strictly forbidden from keeping dogs for any reason. The consequences of disregarding this age-old custom are dire, as it is believed to invoke the wrath of the gods. Enum, like every town, has its own unique history and culture, and this prohibition on dogs is a distinctive part of its heritage. To shed light on the story, our reporter Samuel Mbura visited the community to uncover the story behind this custom and now reports.
In the eastern region town of Enum, you may never hear the barking of a live dog. If you ever do, it may either be from your television or an audio recording. Moving around the town, you will find cats, goats, and other animals. But for dogs, no way. The reason is simple. Keeping dogs, for whatever reason, will be a breach of custom, because of a century-long held belief that the gods of the land hate the presence of other dogs. The Gors believe Enum already has spiritual dogs guarding the town. Hence, a physical one is not needed. Residents here like Kofi has a desire to keep dog for hunting and security at home. However, the fear of divine punishment as well as the disapproval of the town's revered elders has compelled him to conform to the customs.
As for me, I would have preferred to keep dogs because they can be used for security at home and hunting. But our elders are insisting we go by the instructions of the gods and we can't do anything about it.
Ejayao, another resident, holds a firm belief that the people of Enum have no choice but to honor the gods by being obedient. He sees the prohibition on dogs as an expression of gratitude for the gods' unwavering protection over the town throughout history.
The deity led this town from its inception, and that is what it dislikes. So we have no option but to go by his instructions.
The views of Kobina, who also lives in Enum, are not different from Ejayao and Kofi because he sees the prohibition on dogs as a preservation of their cherished history and honoring the legacies of their ancestors. The prohibition on dogs in Enum has become deeply part of the lives of the town's inhabitants, shaping their way of life and their understanding of the divine order. But what lay at the heart of this intriguing custom? Kofi Osai, the revered Asafwache of the Nimfa division in the Num traditional area, explains.
The reason we don't keep dogs in this town is because our deity guards the people with his own dogs. He dislikes the barking of other dogs who may see him patrolling the town at night and prefers to operate in silence without attracting any attention. That is why community members have been instructed not to keep dogs in this town.
Attention. Say ebia bribi say ekoso anado ewo kronumu onunti na omonfa yemma kraman emba kronumu.
But what fate awaits those who unknowingly send dogs into a Num town? The Asafwache, Kofi Osai, explained that such individuals will be required to undergo a ceremonial purification process intended to appease the gods and re-establish harmony within the community. In the worst situation, one could be attacked by community members for disrespecting their customs.
Everyone is expected to go by this directive in order not to incur the wrath of the gods. If you are a stranger passing through the town with your dogs, we will allow you to go. But to stay in this town with your dogs, the village folks will kill them. Dogs from nearby villages are not even allowed here.
Because the next town,
you may have a legal right to keep a dog, but in Enum, you may have to battle the people and culture to have one. So, if you plan on driving through Enum with a dog in your vehicle, remember that the people who revere this custom will not welcome you. Would you insist on your right and end up in the police station or courtroom to assert your right, or would simply stay away from Enum with your dog? Joy News, Samuel Mbura, Enum, Eastern Region.
Well, I know Samuel Mbura has joined us for more on this report. Mbura, I know you are from the north, and you don't usually take trips to this area, the eastern region. What really prompted this story?
I was in Num town for a different reason. And in the conversation, a friend told me about the mystery of that town. The custom is that you don't keep dogs in the community. So I was somehow taken aback, surprised why that should be the situation. So out of curiosity, I had to talk to those who matter in it. So I quickly called the assembly member for the area to do some community entries for me. So after that, I had opportunity to meet the Conte Hini for the Enum Traditional Council in the Eastern region. He now introduced me to the Asapuache, the revered Osai, Kofi Osai, who took us through the history. So it wasn't something that I knew about, but through conversation, a friend told me, and I said, no, this should be a story that everyone will have to hear, or people will be eager to listen. But because we know very well that dogs can be used for security at home, we know they can use them for hunting, and then you can keep them as pets as well. So it really shocked me that for the past centuries, this community does not keep dogs. So that was actually the trigger for this particular report.
But Mbura, what harm does the presence of dogs, cause to the deity that actually abhors the keeping of these dogs?
So I was told by traditional authorities that the gods of the land also has its own dogs, and it does in the spiritual realm. So at night, the gods moves around to protect its people, and because dogs spiritually, the belief is that dogs can see the physical dogs can see spiritual stuff, and back at night, the gods instructed that, look, anytime I'm walking through the township, I don't want anyone to see me because I want to operate in silence. And because dogs have that spiritual foresight, it may be a stumbling block in his operations. That's why the gods, according to the authorities, directed that they should not keep dogs, so that at least when it is going around the town at night, it will be able to operate silently without anyone getting to know that it is out there protecting the people.
Samuel Mbura, when next should we expect the next story?
I plan on going to the Western region, so perhaps I'll have some interesting stories to tell when I return.
From the Western region, we'll be looking forward to that. Samuel Mbura brought us a report of the town that forbids dogs. Now, living in an area that floods often can be very stressful. There have been many instances where flooding and stagnant waters have led to the loss of lives and property. In today's episode of Floods of Trauma, Nana Boache visits Urim and Sewa in the Ashanti region, where residents have abandoned their homes due to floods.
Each year, flooding causes more deaths than any other hazard related to thunderstorms. It wreaks havoc on development infrastructure and increases human casualties all over the world. In the Ashanti region, Ohim and Sewa are known as flooding communities. Residents experience heavy flooding anytime there is a downpour. Adjoa Tichiwa and Mary Owusu are residents of Ohim and victims of floods in the community. They narrate the difficulties they go through anytime there is a downpour.
Anytime it floods, the Yenesu River is unable to house the flood water, allowing it to get into my house. We would realize everything is wet, including our mattresses.
So na na je say mensa ebu me ha ma betwa kase no ebu no ama na gi na me koya ekokasi ma me so ne ba na chi side speed pa nti so wan nwane ampa ba bi amfa na me dwane a ebu me nsam mun na mi dwane abu mi nsam se ba no wan pe ba bi am fa digidi pa na ebeti yeslamo.
I broke my arm when my house got flooded. The flood waters are heavy, so while escaping, I twisted my arm. We plead with the government to do something about this.
So Gemana do yam do say yane yamma want me nwlafie so ni yila want me nkofie san twe pa anya de abetime wrafie wo be wrafie so na sa wo ne yamna nti yaslamo wo hwimti gwaja nhyen na ye wo ye pam chew. We get traumatized anytime it rains. It destroys our goods.
The flood breaks down walls, leaving residents to adopt terrifying means of getting in and out of their buildings. Now this is the Yelyang River, which is supposed to house floodwaters anytime there is a downpour. The situation now is that the Yelyang River is choked and it is unable to house the floodwaters. Not forgetting that the Yelyang River serves as a means of entry and exit for residents living here in Ohim. Streams and gutters in these communities are stored with sand and waste materials. Left unattended, the clogged gutters and blocked streams lead to several instances of flood. At Sewa, some residents have abandoned their houses as flood takes over their homes. This is the Susan River in between Sepe and Asebi. Anytime there is a downpour, residents living here in Sepe and also in Asebi are left homeless.
It is true. This house, when we were here, this was the best house around this particular place. But now, because of the flood, the person has vacated the place. The one who is in the house now is just a caretaker. And even the little flood, he has to leave. The little flood, he has to leave. Immediately, he sees that it has gathered a momentum to rain. He has to leave. When it rains, the water will be flowing. It will be flowing. Before you realize it will come back again. I don't know whether it is choked over here or it is not getting a free flow to go to wherever it likes. That is the cause of it.
One of our my uncle na yiri wu nti na ye wo honom nti ye frɛ ne ye ka kyerɛ sɛ nsuo aba ye honom nti ye ba na bibia se nti minya hwe nti nyama na ye wo dan no mu.
When we returned from a trip, everything in our house got destroyed. This happens almost every single year, but we have nowhere to go.
Enka bia ye be han ya na ye ka sɛ bia ye betu afiri ha nso ya ye papa fie ne ye ni bibia ye bɛkɔ.
They want government to help solve the perennial flooding in the community.
In fact, it's a problem to us over here. We don't know what to do to this particular situation. We need your help. Since you've come, we know you are our mouthpiece. You should send this particular problem to the highest team.
Yes, Lamo. Sakebenya kede ka 6 months bia kamo metim so ni mama yetin so ni ma.
Government should do something about this as soon as possible. At least after every 6 months, they should drain the stream for
us.
Compounds like this are unable to survive anytime there is a downpour. Walls break down, rooms get flooded, leaving residents helpless. For Joy News, my name is Nana Boache Dankwayadom, Kumase.
Hello, welcome to Business. My name is Darrell Kwao. The Bank of Ghana says the delay in publishing its financial accounts is as a result of the domestic debt exchange program. Deputy Ranking Member on the Finance Committee of Parliament, Isaac Adongo, had criticized the Governor of the Central Bank, Dr. Nes Addison, of failing to file financial statements of banks for almost 6 months now. Take a listen.
We have been waiting to receive the gazetting and the publication of the Bank of Ghana's own financial statements, which by law should have been published by the end of April of the year. We are now half a year through the year, and all the banks have complied with the filing of their returns to the Bank of Ghana. Those reports include what we call the long form reports, which are very detailed, audited reports of the banks, breaking down every single item on the balance sheet of the banks in order that we can see the bank for who it is. But Bank of Ghana is not able to comply with its own law to do the very things that the other banks are doing. The bank has not filed and published its financial statements. Every 15 days, the Bank of Ghana is supposed to gazette its assets and liabilities, and at the end of the month, they are supposed to further file its assets and liabilities. It's been almost 6 months now. The Bank of Ghana is in clear violations of these provisions. You would have noticed that over the last 2-3 years, the Bank of Ghana has been running away from the Finance Committee of Parliament. We have been inviting him to appear before us and speak to his report. Initially, I had to write letters to him and get my lawyers to warn him before he started filing his reports. Having filed the reports, he is not willing to appear before us. We will engage the Speaker to subpoena the Governor to appear before us, and that there's no hiding place for him. He cannot be recklessly managing our monetary and financial institutions, collapse our banks and financial institutions, render our livelihood useless with inflation, interest rate, and depreciation, and do not want to account for those matters.
While reacting to this, Head of Research at the Bank of Ghana, Philip Abredu-Otu, explained the central bank was compelled to delay publication because of the complications of the domestic debt exchange program.
You recall that the bank also did that by seeking a reprieve from the Bank of Ghana. All banks are supposed to do that by the end of the first quarter, but because of the impact of the domestic debt exchange on the balance sheet of the bank wrote to the central bank to ask for an extension of the deadline to allow the external auditors to do a more thorough job. We understood the issues at stake, and the central bank granted the bank that reprieve to allow them to work with the auditors diligently to get the accounts published. So we extended the time for the publication to the end of April, by which time all the banks complied and they published their accounts. So for the banks, it was extended. Now, so I'm just trying to put it in context. In the case of the Bank of Ghana, we also were affected by the domestic debt exchange, and our external auditors requested that they needed more time to do a more thorough job. So the Bank of Ghana wrote to the finance minister, who we report to ask for an extension of that deadline to the end of July.
That's all in business. The news continues after this break.
Dams constructed under the One Village, One Dam project in Bongo, Kassina, Nankana, West and Talensi districts, all in the Upper East region, have dried up at least by January because the dams cannot hold enough water. Farmers told Joy News they leave the water for their animals to drink and are unable to farm during the dry season as the program intended. In the first of two-part hotline documentary titled Thirsty Dams, features editor reports that farmers are pleading with government to coerce contractors to return to the sites and do a better job. The documentary airs on July 17. Here are assets.
Water to the northerner is like blood. When we have water, we can do a lot of things for ourselves.
And without it, unemployment, poverty, and famine. To escape, many young people travel down south for supposed greener pastures. The NPP government provided a solution: one village, one dam.
The then candidates and then the running mates visited a chief in one of these villages and met the women digging the ground with their bare hands for water. So when they saw that, they said, well, when we come to power, we will provide you with water that can be better than what you are using your bare hands to construct. And that is how come the promise of one village, one dam.
I'm saying every village, one dam. One village, one dam. You know?
The policy appealed to the people in the northern regions.
The government came here and told us that they will be giving us dam. And our people assured them that if they give them dam, they also let them laugh. And really, you can ask our assemblyman and even ask the MPP people what this community did for them. They voted massively for them.
It was a political promise that won the hearts and minds of the people. The dams should make it possible for farmers to farm all year round and break the cycle of waiting for the rains before cultivation. It was the reason why the people of Bongo sang and danced till they became drenched in sweat. When the president cut salt for the implementation of the project.
We have begun the One Village, One Dam initiative, and you here in Bongo can see for yourself that we have begun the initiative. It is our intention that Bongo alone will get 10 dams this year. 570 are being built. You heard the minister across the 3 northern regions, and Bongo constituency alone is going to get 10 out of that 570.
This campaign promise has been fulfilled. Well, but not quite.
Dam always takes us 2 months to dry up.
Only 2 months?
Only 2 months. October, November. The water dry up.
The full documentary airs on July 17. Please make a date. And before we wrap up on Joy News Desk, there's a statement that has been released by the Ministry of National Security and signed by the minister. It reads, the Ministry of National Security has taken note of media reports and publications that suggest a deliberate and targeted operation spearheaded by the Ghana Armed Forces to forcibly repatriate Burkinabe refugees from Ghana. The ministry refused such claims and wishes to state that Ghana is committed to accommodating Burkinabe nationals who have been displaced into the Upper East and Upper West regions of Ghana due to the prevailing security situation in southern Burkina Faso. The ministry, in collaboration with the Ghana Refugee Board and the UN High Commission for Refugees, has accordingly established a temporary reception center in the Upper East region capable of holding an estimated 2,100 displaced people from Burkina Faso. And the government of Ghana, while reaffirming its determination to safeguard the peace, stability, and territorial integrity of the country and promote the welfare of the citizens of the country, will continue to undertake the necessary operations without compromising values such as respect for human rights, including rights of refugees and displaced persons from neighboring countries. And that's how we wrap up Joy News Desk. My name is Aisha Ibrahim. Log on to myjoyonline.com. There's more of the news and updates of all the developing stories. See you again at 12.